Dr. Phil Hickman, welcome to the Mindship Podcast. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity.
It's a bigger opportunity for me for a couple of reasons. We chatted a little bit offline. We're very hot on the topic of AI and looking for innovators, and really want to have deep conversations about what AI beyond Chat GPT, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
and But not only that, your work in the world of education. Pick apart your entrepreneurship journey, really the impact that you're looking to make. I think when we read your background, I was like, definitely, let's get this guy on here. So,
cool.
real quick before we dive in, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background. I mean, you come with a pedigree that is well worth mentioning.
Oh well, thank you. Yeah, I have 5 graduate degrees and a doctorate. I did everything in the field of education, from a teacher to a school psychologist, assistant principal, principal. I was a area superintendent and director of education. Started a charter school. I was area superintendent in some of the largest school districts in the United States. At Houston Independent School District, and I also was a superintendent as well in some of the most rural school districts in the United States in Mississippi. Then I was a national ambassador for the United States Department of Education. Did some work with Apple and Amazon, and did a lot of work with Oracle. Worked for Oracle for a little bit, and decided, you know what, I taught myself how to code, and I wanted to solve, the issues that I felt that I was born to solve, and that was
Mm.
reading. And that's why I developed Playbook, which is a innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help children learn how to read.
Man, so I'm gonna go right there, man, and I want you to. Your grandmother gave you a gift, and I want to jump back a bunch of years and have you start there. I heard that in one of the shows that I listened to you
Yeah,
on. Share that with our audience.
yeah. See, well, one of the things what people don't know is, even right now, currently in the United States, 75% of fourth graders in the entire United States read below grade level, and I that was one of the things that I understood and I went through. I was a struggling reader in third grade, until my grandmother Ruby taught me how to read in fourth grade. She later passed away on my fifth grade birthday, on my birthday. But the gift she gave me, to be able to read, and then also be able to impact others, led me to kind of my journey through education, and then really trying to solve a real world problem at the macro level with developing Playbook.
Mm. What drew you to education initially? I mean, talk about graduate, say five postgraduate degrees and a doctorate. What drew you to education? Clearly, you went all in after that gift from your grandmother. But what was it that drew you so knee deep into education and learning?
Well, yeah, and it is, it's 6 graduate degrees, and then I'm actually finishing up an MBA as well. So it'll be 7 soon.
Go
But
on with your bad self.
no, yeah, I actually, so I've always did well in school, and sometimes you grow up in places where you don't understand the steps that it takes to be successful. So I was a football player. I went to college on a football scholarship, University of Missouri, uh,
Okay.
and then I had fractured my neck. But the one thing is, always somebody that is impactful in your life that makes an intervention. My grandmother made the intervention when I was younger. I had a high school counselor that put me in all college prep classes. I didn't know. I was enrolled in classes. I took the classes, right? And so my sophomore year in college, I had a professor ask me, are you in graduate school? Are you going to graduate school? And I said, well, I'm not in that track. I thought it was something that you had to enter into your freshman year. I wasn't in a graduate school track.
Uh-huh.
And so that was the one that kind of opened up my eyes and said, look, this is what you need to do.
Hmm.
So it was that intervention when I was hurting football, and I started to discover my other talents, which was intellect. I just started working hard and competing in a different arena. Is what I tell
Come
everybody.
on.
I don't
Come on.
think I'm any
Come on with
smarter
it.
than anyone else. It was
Come on.
just understanding the rules of the game or the application. So a funny thing is, I actually written a book called "Stop Dribbling Footballs." And so it was actually illustrated by the guy who he actually did the first episodes of the Rugrats, and then he did the first 64 episodes of The Simpsons. And it's a story about a kid that grew up in a world of basketball, and so
Hmm.
all his life you can see him in the basket. He's has the basketball and all these kind of things. And then he goes into a new world, which basically he gets on a school bus and everybody is dressed in a football uniform. And he comes with his basketball uniform. And so when he gets off the bus, everybody's talking about him, you know. But basically, long story short was when he started the game, he was chosen as a quarterback. He got the ball, he hiked it, and he started dribbling it. And the coach is like, "Stop dribbling footballs." And so, long story short, it basically it gives a success at the end once he understood the rules of the game. But it's really about school is understanding the rules of the game. That's what I told my
Mm,
students all the time. If they went around and we were playing, let's say basketball, and you run around tackling people, would that be smart or would that be unwise? And everybody's always like, that doesn't make sense. Exactly. So you're trying to play the
mm,
game of school using out of school rules, and everybody kind of
mm,
pauses and it's like, look,
mm.
perseverance, this, that, behavior, all those kind of things that, and then people start to be successful in that because they understand it's just a different arena.
Yeah.
And you just have to know the rules, the hidden rules of the game.
Man, that was beautiful the way you broke that down. I'm glad you went back to the whole fracturing the neck thing because you passed right through that like that didn't matter. you 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 passed right through that like, hey, wait a minute, you just fractured your neck and you moved on right through that like that didn't even matter to the story. But I'm glad you came back to that and brought that home. Um, is, you talk about the one of the essential or one of the critical problems with student learning, and I've listened to it. Apologize if I get it wrong. You say that one of the challenges with children reading has to do with the fact that we're asking the brain to do multiple things at the same time, and there's a challenge. And I know that we're going to talk about your app and how you guys work through, but can you illustrate and articulate that for our audience? Because I thought that was interestingly profound. When I've got grandkids today, I've got my kids who've grown. Never thought about hearing it the way you described it when I listened to it. But talk about that problem with reading that you describe, where it's challenging for the brain.
No, actually, teaching reading is like teaching rocket science. So everybody thinks that you're born, you learn how to walk, you talk, or you talk, you walk, and then you read. And that's actually not true. Reading is actually not a natural process. It's more of a newer evolution, that we came across. And because you're taking two aspects of the brain, one is designed for, sight and looking at things, and the other is sound. But it's not that the things that you appear that they're associated with the sound. And so you actually have to rewire the brain in order for a person to learn to read. That's actually been one of the issues with school system and teaching reading is that everybody usually teaches whole language learning, meaning you memorize words, you look at picture cues and all those kind of things. And the science of reading, which has been around forever, always spoke against that. But it was a long wave of you're teaching kids how to read, you point to the picture and all those kind of things, as opposed to teaching phonics and phonemic awareness, which those are your unnatural processes.
Hmm.
And so to be able to decode words and break it down. And the same thing is why we developed the app Playbook, is because the assessment, the diagnose and prescribing an intervention for a student is all hinged right now on quietly reading a paragraph and answering multiple choice questions. And that is actually reading comprehension. That has nothing to do with basic reading.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, and it's because kids spend more time trying to decode and break down words than they don't have any more energy or brain power left to understand what they read.
That's
And
what I remember you saying.
and that's really the real issue. So we developed the first tool that actually hears a child read, and then can also hear the child read all the way down to the phonemic level. So not just whole words. So if you read the word bat, we can hear b, at, or the lack thereof. And so we can really see where the issues are from a phonemic standpoint or a phonic standpoint, and really prescribe an intervention using gamification of those kind of things. And really
Man,
we can really tailor and personalize education for students.
man, I remember when I heard that and I was like, wow. So, and now it's so good because right now kids are going to have technology in their hand as early as they ever have in the history of technology, right?
Right.
You know,
They're
our
born with iPads and born with phones in their hand.
automatically. So when you think about the earlier intervention that your product your app, your technology is going to have. I want you to talk about some statistics. I remember hearing you talk about some alarming statistics
Yep.
relative to um, crime, and where reading seems to be. There was a thing you cite the statistics that
Right.
are
If a child,
polarizing in the
if
that
a
mess
child is
things
not
up when a kid can't read.
right. So again, the data says, and this is right before COVID. So 75% of fourth graders in the entire United States read below grade level, and that leads to a high dropout. So some of our schools we are considered dropout factories, where they only
So,
graduate 30 and 40% of their students.
mhm.
And in the United States, 73% of crime created in the United States is created by high school dropouts.
73%.
3%. 82% of prison inmates have a reading impairment that's just never been corrected. So
Wow.
simply teaching someone how to read can save their life and change the trajectory of their life easily. Just that
Yeah.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of we missed the ball. But the issue is it's not just affecting inner city and poor kids anymore. This is the entire United States, regardless of your socioeconomical status. It's saying that we are the projection of our children are good. We have the lowest high school completion right now ever in history. We have the lowest entry of college enrollment. And then even when you start looking at, okay, who's our educators? Well, we have colleges and universities that are actually closing their college of education department because they don't have enough people enrolling it. So,
Mm.
even though we look at, technology, we look at AI, people are scared of AI. But we have to figure out something because, and like I would tell my teachers, it's not that technology will replace teachers, but those who use it will replace those who don't.
Mm.
And so if we don't have these tools in our hand, because we have a national teacher shortage, so we know that there's no way that we can go against it. We're not only do we not have enough teachers out there, we don't have enough teachers in the university, so we can predict that.
Yeah.
And so we have to lean on technology, artificial intelligence, just like other industries are doing, and because we have to figure out, to me, and like I said all the time, like this is a level of national security. Our children will no longer compete for jobs with their neighbor or the next town over. This is a global. They're going to compete globally for jobs, and especially when we look at the automation. But when we
Hmm.
look at the white collar automation, like that is
Correct.
huge. I
Yeah.
mean, we have doctors who use robotics to do surgery. We have in a law field, we can use AI easily. Excuse me for the phone, but we can use
That's fine.
AI easily to search and to prescribe interventions in the law field. So it's no running from it at all.
Right. I love the way you said. I mean, it's so true. Those who use it will replace those who don't.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about it is, in my industry, I made a declaration in my company to everybody who worked for me in January. Right now, we're recording in October 2023. This was January 2023, not long after we got our hands on ChatGPT and the world took fire. Now, I've been paying attention to AI on the low for
Mhm.
about 4 years. I actually published something on Facebook about 2018. I was on a plane. I picked up a book, and the title of the book was something like "When Robots Do Everything,"
Yeah.
and it's right behind me. And I said, "Are you paying attention?" And so I've been fascinated by automation and all these things, but now it's here, it's real, it's mainstream.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see that you're bringing AI into the background of this app. And that leads me to my next question. Um, when did you start thinking about building an app or a product that could solve the problem? Because, you were, I mean, you've been an educator, you've done everything, let's just call it, you've done all of it, right? But what makes you decide I'm going to go into the world of entrepreneurship and I'm going to build something to solve this problem in mass?
Yeah. One is my experience in Apple, Amazon,
Mm,
and Oracle, and it was just eye opening as far as the solutions that they were drafting, the solutions that they were getting involved in to solve real world issues, and I figured out. we have to be able to translate this to education. Like we have to. We don't have a choice. Um, the other thing was when I was looking at some of the data out there, it says, and remember, I've been in some of the top Fortune 500 companies. It says that in education, we actually sit on more data than a Fortune 500 company, and yet we don't use it to drive decisions. And they know, and as far as in the corporation world and in corporations, they understand user behavior better than the than the end user, the customer, right? They can suggest things to me before I walk in the store and I'm buying it. I can talk and it will show up on my phone and ads and tailor. I mean, but yet in education, we produce the best product ever. A productive, educated citizen, and we missed the mark. We have all this data that can really personalize and drive instruction.
Hmm.
And I tell people all the time, um, we are the minute second that youngster walked through our doors. What are we doing? What are we doing to increase student achievement, to increase user satisfaction? All those kind of
Right.
things that we
Yeah.
need to look at, and AI can really synthesize that data. It takes away from us being data scientists and can give us smart insights. My playbook gives smart insights all the time and really directs the adults as far as every inch, like this is what should happen. This is the highest percentage of intervention that should happen that will lead to this child being a successful reader.
Hmm. Is the product sold directly into school districts? How do you distribute the product? Is it consumer direct? Is it
Right.
B2B through the school systems? How do you get the product to market?
It's a good question. We're actually B2B, direct to school districts right now. Later on, we will be B2C. That's a long overhaul. We're finding so much success in our school districts.
Yeah.
That's working for us. The other thing that I wanted to tell you that I thought was pretty neat, that we came up with as a patent, and we use a generative AI as well, is we call it text complexifier. And so what that is that one of the frustrations we had was, we had a youngster that he's a third grader. He wants to read about astronauts. And in a school, they only have, those books at the fifth grade level. It's just because books are selected by what adult decided what needs to be appropriate for that. Well, we actually text complexifier. We can take any text and we can stretch it from kindergarten all the way up to about a ninth grade reading level. And we can put the text, personalize it exactly where it's not too hard for you, where you're frustrated, it's not too easy, where you're bored, and it always scaffolds up. And so it keeps pushing you every time and every
Mm.
time to get you at the next level as you're reading. So we don't change the content, we just change the text to where it's so we go through millions of words to make sure that the content is still the same, but is at your readability level.
That is a game changer. That
Yeah.
right there is a game changer. I mean, you think about it, like you think about a traditional, books in a classroom, and then you think about even a library. I look at my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter. She's all into exactly what you said. I mean, and she's into stuff that's beyond her years, and
Yeah.
so it's super interesting that you just said that. So that's another big of the one of the big things about AI, and how you can generate these prescriptive opportunities so you don't hold any child back. You meet them where they are. Is one of my favorite phrases. You meet them where they are and let them take you and you can take them on the journey as
Oh
they
yeah.
so choose.
Yeah, if you think about the complexity of a classroom, we no longer have that 60 or 70% of the students are at the same level, and
Right.
there are few outcasts. The classroom is so differentiated. So right now that let's say we are reading about astronauts, we can give that text to every single student at their reading level where no one is left out, and everybody
Wow.
can participate in discussion.
Wow.
Before before you're in a fourth grade class and you have kids reading at the first grade, second grade level, third grade level, and above, and you give them a text, and there's kids are going to sit there quiet because they cannot read it.
Mm.
But they can read it at their level and will have a way to contribute to the conversation and the discussion. Then that starts to increase reading comprehension and those kind of things, and
Mm.
questioning and higher level thinking when you can get kids to participate and feel successful in class, and they can raise their hand and participate because they understood the content that they just read.
Mm. Boy, I tell you, man, this is mind boggling. I knew it was going to be a great conversation. I knew I was going to learn a lot. So how does it work? Let's talk about how the app actually works when is in a student's hand. Is it a mobile app or is it a computer app? How does it work?
Yeah, we're device agnostic, but web based. We our
Okay.
math version is app as a app. And so the student, logs on, and there's a couple of different phases. One phase is that they're just reading fluency, oral reading. So they're reading the text as they turn the page and are reading out loud. A lot of people ask why oral reading, and the quick answer to that is that we actually, even during silent reading, we never read quietly. You always hear your voice in your head, so
Hmm.
you're always oral reading, and so that helps with that fluency. But again, the oral reading aspect of it is that we can really diagnose any reading deficiencies. We take in 145 different accents and also regional dialects as well. The other aspect of it is comprehension. And actually, if a student reads a passage, let's say a teacher, the point of this exercise is looking at comprehension, whether the child is inferencing, understanding the main idea. And if once a student reads a passage first before they answer the questions, if they're not reading at grade level, they actually have to go back to a learning process. The second time,
Mm.
if they're not reading at a proficient level, then the questions will show up. The first time they didn't, the second time the questions will show up, but they will alert the teacher that you guard these questions with caution because that student was not a proficient reader. The other aspect of it is kind of we have two levels of gamification. One is they're kind of gamified activities, similar to kind of assessment questions, but we assess at the highest level. So not only just drag and drop and point and click, but then you have to produce it. So it will say, what sound does the letter A make? And on a typical activity, the only thing someone can do is drag an apple on the letter A, and the computer tells you that's right. The A makes the A sound. Well, here the student has to produce it, whether they're
Mm.
produce the sound, blending, segmenting, all those things. We actually assess at the highest level. The other gamification aspect of it is kind of neat is that once a student is reads, they're doing the basic level activities where they're learning to read, they're doing comprehension, and when we find the deficits of the student, what we do is we actually we give a playlist to the student, their customized academic games. Let's say one of the games kind of look like Pac-Man, and you have to gobble up the letters in ABC order before the other Pac-Man gets you, or you have to only gobble up the vowels, or basketball, or they're just thousands of customized games that kids love and are having fun, but they're actually working on the skill that they have a deficit. Once they master that skill through the game, and then it cross references through what they read and the other activities that the teacher assigned, then those games drop off and new games come on that only are at that child's deficit. The same thing is we have an AI recommendation engine where we recommend books to the student based off their interests, based off their readability level, and based off their deficits as well.
Boy. Hey man. Um, this is beyond impressive. I so me being so far removed from school, even though I got grandkids, I'm still removed from school. But I gotta ask you this question, man. How many engineers are behind getting to this level that you're currently at?
Yeah, we have a pretty good sized team. And one of the things is we have some of the top experts in the field
Yeah.
of education and gamification and those kind of things. But just a total of engineers, I have to think, but we
I mean, you don't
started
have to go
out,
specifically to
yeah,
answer it, but like
we,
you've got a decent sized team.
we have a decent sized team, yes. And
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
CTO is excellent.
Yeah, and for the audience, you aren't just an educator with multiple degrees and a student of being a student. You actually learned how to do some coding yourself, didn't you?
I did. I did. I first started out trying to teach myself how to code, and it is not as easy as everybody thinks. And then I joined in Kansas City. We had a boot camp, uh, Launch Code. We had a boot camp. At the same time, I developed two nonprofits that are actually coding nonprofits. One for adults and one for students. One is because I felt at the boot camp, I had a little prior knowledge, and I felt that its entry level was people who already had experience and were trying to get validation. So, we had some real dynamic people who already coded, developed apps and those kind of things. And they didn't go to school, which they don't have to. They just needed to go through a program for validation. So, although I was able to keep up, it was a fast paced program. And then, two, I wanted to kind of look at how do we develop our urban shore. So, instead of going offshore, we have a lot of youngsters, a lot of folks in the urban community. How do we develop that
Mhm.
for America's talent? And so that's why I developed those two technical nonprofits as well.
What are the names?
So We Code KC is one of the co-founder of We Code KC, and then also Mississippi Coding Academy is the other
I love it. Urban Shore. I love that. That's the first time I've heard that.
one.
Urban Shore. I love that. So I got to switch gears really fast and talk about the day in the life of Dr. Phil Hickman, entrepreneur, studying for his MBA. Add to the journey. I mean, you went through sort of your journey so fast that I'm wondering when you must have been here for a year, there for a year. I mean, but seriously, how does your day look today as an entrepreneur? Behind a tech app as well as your family life. How do you manage your day with all you got going on?
Yeah, you know, I would say from elementary, high school, I did everything. I was a five-sport letterman in the state of Missouri, so football, basketball, track, wrestling, and baseball. I did two sports at once. I was a ball boy for the Kansas City Royals. I was in forensics. I was in debate. I was a student council. All those kind of things, right? And so, and I always had to prioritize my time, and I thought sports, allowed me to do that. So I don't know nothing but to be in a bunch of activities and doing the best I can, with my time on earth. I feel like I have to be a blessing to others,
Mm.
and then just the learning journey is just how I learn. So you talk about a day in a life. One of it's just constant learning. Even though I was a superintendent, and I tell everybody, you know, as a superintendent, you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization. Sometimes you're the school district is the highest workforce employer in a community. It is the highest is the largest janitorial service. It's the largest food service. We feed more people on a daily basis than anyone. It's the largest construction service. So
Wow.
and like I said, largest employer. All those kind of things. So,
Wow.
but it's still different. That's why I had to go get my MBA. It's
Gotcha.
still different
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
than in the corporate world. And one of the things one of my friends told me, he said, "Hey, look, as a school superintendent, you go to sleep during the summer. You wake up, your money is there." He said, as an entrepreneur, you have to hunt. You have to hunt and kill what you eat, right? You have to go out and get it on a daily basis, and
Continuously.
there's nothing that's guaranteed, and you just cannot stop. And so that's what it's like to have a startup, a tech startup, education, which is not glamorous, because there's a weird procurement cycle in education.
Yeah.
And there's a fraternity in education. So regardless of how good your product is, you have to build those relationships, in education in order to penetrate that field.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about adding things that are scary like AI, and gamification, which people are not kind of used to, but our kids are, those are hurdles and obstacles that you have to go through educating people. And so I hate to say, like some people ask, is this more of a social impact technology? And it is. It is. We're still a business, but we definitely have a high end social contribution. But I think people take that for granted with education companies is that they just put it in the area of social, and we're doing pretty good.
Hmm.
We're working on a contract with the state of New York, which is the largest school district in the nation. They
Right.
have over 1.5 million students, close to 2,000 schools. And so, that's a great opportunity in itself, not only
Yeah.
to impact kids and change the trajectory of a state, but also from a business standpoint.
Wow.
So my life is just it's running around. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a brother, all those kind of things. And
All the
so,
things. Yeah.
yeah, all things, and so it's all about just kind of dividing your time and and kind of that's what I do. And
Yeah.
you can't really see the gray hair because AI, I'm sure, is real good on this computer screen, and it's automatically changing my gray hair to black.
Well, it ain't doing so well because I wish I had hair. It ain't bringing down in. So for those that are for those listening on the podcast on the audio, you can't see what I'm referencing. But if you're on YouTube, you know the AI ain't working that good here. So anyway, I tried to have the beard and get the look. My hair been gone for 30 years. So we might see what we can do afterwards, though.
Right, right.
Anyway, talk a little bit about the most rewarding thing about the entrepreneurial journey, bringing this product to market.
Yeah, for me, the first most rewarding thing is that people were willing to pay for something that I put my mind to and developed.
Come on.
Like that was like as an entrepreneur, you're like, wait a minute, people find value in something that you created, like literally patents, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not something that you think is possible, obtainable in certain environments that you grow up in, and so that was the first thing. The second thing is the impact. When in education, as everyone knows, you have to come with research, and to be able to have people kind of scrutinize and research your product and find favorable results that you're actually growing students. That is something that's a blessing. I think the last rewarding part of it is just well, there's two more. One is being creative, like just I mean, I'm a product guy, and sometimes my team has to hold me back and say, you got to focus on sales first before we add another feature, right? But
Gotcha.
I'm a
Gotcha.
product guy, and then the third thing is just being able to create a legacy. And we know that in startups, one of the end goals is exiting, but just to create a legacy for your kids and your family to know that no, you can put your mind to something, you can create something, frame a business around it, and be successful with it
Yeah.
as well. And so, yeah,
I don't know, man. I'm on the outside looking in, but I got to tell you, I've never heard about anything like this. I'm here in Southern Nevada, Clark County. If you look at the statistics, we seem to hold serve in the low 40s, and it's we're third or fourth largest school district in the country, something like that.
yeah,
So I think what you're doing it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to impact a lot of people. It's going to impact a lot. There are people right now in my mind that I think I want to introduce you to. I could introduce you to, and we'll talk offline. It needs to be here in Clark County,
yeah,
and I just know from the work that the board that I'm the chair of, what Richard Jack is doing with Gentlemen by Choice, Ladies by Choice. I can tell you, he knows firsthand the evidence that this would be an impact.
yeah.
This would be an impact. So I know what you're doing is going to work. I'm happy to support any way I can, make introductions anywhere I can. I'm not really heavily involved in school district and government affairs, things of that nature, but I know plenty of people who are. And I think what you're doing is absolutely revolutionary. And that's what got our attention to get us here to this conversation today. So I do have one more question. First of all, let's make sure we let everybody know where to find it because Playbook is not spelled the same way. Tell a story about that, and let's let people know where to find your product.
Yep. So it's at playbookeducation.com, PLABOOK education.com. And everybody asks, you're reading that. Why are you misspelling the word play? Well, it's actually a multi-syllabic word, so the vowel can scream its name. And so it's one of our weird things with reading. Again, like I said, it's like rocket science. And so there's so many rules involved in reading. So it's a play on reading, just so that question could be asked
Yeah,
and
yeah.
explained.
No,
So
I remember hearing about.
playbookeducation.com, PLABOOK education.com.
Yeah, we're going to link all that up in the show notes. And I remember listening to something you said on another interview, and so it was very interesting to me that you were very intentional about that. I don't take anything of it now in my world because I work in the world of digital, and everything has a play on words, no pun intended. But uh, so you've also authored 3 books. You mentioned one of them. I wanted to ask, what are the other 2 books that you authored?
So the other book is Emotives, the truth behind student behavior, and that's more of my social emotional book, understanding children's brains and their emotions, and that deals with some of my degrees. Like I said, I'm also a child psychologist or school psychologist as well. The other book is Execution by Firing Squad: Effective Leadership When You're the Target, and that's kind of looking at my experience as a superintendent in Mississippi. I've never been to Mississippi in the South in that sense. And, it was some horrible things that I experienced as a superintendent where they didn't want a certain amount of kids to be educated. I mean, people would cut my brakes. I was, everybody remembers Ahmaud Arbery, who was, chased down with a truck and a rifle. I have that documented in our book before that. Fortunately enough, I was able to survive or run from it. I wasn't at a toe to toe combat with them. But yeah, I mean, it was, everything that you can think of. It was unimaginable. People will come to the board meeting and say some very awful things, and I stuck in there for 4 years to make sure that these students are educated and that they're have a right to excellent education.
I don't know where to go from there. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
You know, because I heard in your background that you were, superintendent down in Mississippi, but hats off to you, man. The staying power, the focus, the dedication, the commitment to the mission, to the vision, to the calling, it sounds like to me,
Yeah.
is what it sounds like to me at this point. So, congratulations, Dr. Phil Hickman. Everyone listening, we're talking about playbookeducation.com, PLA book, BOOK education.com. We'll link everything up in the show notes. You gotta find out what's going on. If you're listening in anywhere in North America, by the way, is it in just North America right now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, United States, North America.
Just United States right now. Okay. So if you're in the United States listening right now, which is where a large part of our listening audience is, I want you to listen to this episode and think back, listen to it again, pass it on to someone you know in a school district. Let's help this organization. Let's help this man get this mission into the kids' hands at the level that they need it. Just look back in the episode at some of the statistics he cited, the crime rates, the jail rates. He's not just doing something to build a company so he can exit it. That's it. That is every entrepreneur's desire and goal. But the impact that he's going to make along the way is necessary at this state and age. So, final thoughts, Dr. Field. Final thoughts. What haven't we covered that you think is important for everybody to know?
Well, I think I always say in my interviews that we have to be abreast of what the research is saying is that in 2040, 85% of jobs that will exist have not even been created yet, but it will have an aspect of technology and, believe it or not, reading fluency. And the reason is because even right now with ChatGPT, that little black box in your hand, you have access to anything and everything. And your job is going to be, how do you read through that critically, think through it, and apply it, and also how to decipher between false information and real information.
Didn't even know you were going to say it, but I knew an AI guy knew what I.
Yeah.
That's what I've been talking to people. I've been telling people about that for years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, not for years, but for the rest of this whole year. It's like you got to know if it's telling you. You don't even know if it's telling you the truth.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so the problem is that everybody um, is, for some reason, we're in disbelief of how fast automation is happening.
Hmm.
And it's because you actually cannot see beyond everything that you see now. So, for instance,
Right.
let's say at McDonald's, where in most states they have an automated voice that comes on that you're talking to, a chatbot, an AI chatbot, and if it fails, then the human gets on the speaker.
Yep.
But they're just perfecting it. Pretty soon,
Correct.
it will not be a person there, right?
Correct.
And then even if you look at, let's say, handling flipping burgers, and I can't think of that technology as something patty, but it's a robot that actually uh, makes hamburgers. And
Hmm.
guess how much that robot costs? $30,000. So there are restaurants that have that robot. $30,000 is what one employee's salary would be the
For
whole
the
year.
whole
But
year.
guess what? This robot doesn't sleep. doesn't complain, doesn't miss a day,
and probably
or
performs better.
yeah, right. And so it's just going to get better too.
Yeah.
And so it's going to continue to increase. With Elon Musk or driverless cars, that's just gonna get. It's gonna be here. If you think
Right.
about ChatGPT, is actually the fastest evolution when you look at the technology evolution. The industrial revolution, technology. We were just in the mobile, evolution, and now ChatGPT. Think about it. It just came out like December of last year. By March, it was already like on version 3. We're on
Yeah.
version 4, going on version 5 now.
Yeah.
So there's never in history has it changed that fast. And
That's
so
right.
one of the things that one of the last things I want to say is that what they say is that the new form of intelligence will be the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because technology is going to have such a short shelf life. It already has a year shelf life now. We have a new version of an iPhone every year, but you're going to have to be comfortable with learning something and then pivoting real quick and learning something new, and just keep that evolution of change and learning,
Yeah.
reading, and being comfortable. And so that's the society that we live in. And again, I would say it's an aspect of national security, because the average American is going to have to compete with robotics and automation, and then also compete globally.
100%. Great summary for the show, Dr. Phil Hickman. Thank you for first of all the work that you've done leading up to here. It's clearly in your DNA to really get after it, to learn, to adapt, to adjust, to make things happen, juggle multiple things. But I think what I've learned just in our short time together is your bigger vision for how you've kind of brought your superstar power to this conversation and to the work that you're doing and the product that you're building. And to echo what you just said at the end, when I go back to January 2023, when I talked to my team, I said, you'll learn everything there is to know about ChatGPT and how it applies to your role,
Right.
or you probably won't be here much longer. And it's not because I'm not on the bandwagon of technology is going to take your job. No, technology takes everybody's job, and then new jobs are created. The
Right.
tractor isn't still around. Like
Right.
when the tractor hit the farm, that made people irrelevant. Like it pulls food, it pulls the crops faster than you.
Yeah.
So I laugh about the one when you talk about driverless cars. I think about just the concept that in the next maybe 10, 15 years, it could be almost illegal to touch a steering wheel.
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
they've proven the car is better risk wise,
Safer.
safer,
Imagine how
less
safe that would be.
less accidents per mile.
Yeah. Period.
So you just named it, right? So we have to learn how to, and that's one of the things about the human psyche is we don't like change,
Yeah.
and the only thing that is constant is change. And
Yeah.
so
But
to the
what a very large employer is truck drivers. Are truck drivers.
yeah,
That's
one of the largest,
that would be eliminated.
half a billion truck drivers nationwide in the United
Yes.
States, I think.
So when they talk about that it will be the have and have nots,
That's right.
and there's not going to be a middle class, because everybody that's relying on that middle class job, that automation is will take that
It's
over.
coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Yeah, you got to pivot. Got to pivot fast. And the thing about it is there are places to pivot
It is.
as long as we don't wait until the last minute.
Right. That
Right.
truck,
So anyway,
somebody has to advise that technology.
yes,
Why not?
Yeah.
You better be the truck driver that advises it.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Hey man, I hope maybe we can have you back on the show in the future. Get an update on playbookeducation.com. My gut tells me you're probably working on some other projects that maybe we'll learn about down the line. I can imagine you probably have more
My
than.
investors would not want to hear that.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur a long time, and I'm vibing with your energy, so I can already tell you that my mind works a mile a minute. So I'm sure you got some more projects. So I'd love to keep in touch with you as time goes on.
Yes, sir. Definitely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, listeners, thank you for hanging out with us today. I hope you got a lot out of a conversation today with Dr. Phil Hickman. Do me a favor, check out playbookeducation.com, if for no other reason than to find out how it works, what they're doing, pass it along to someone in a school district near you. That will do him and his organization a great favor. And it would be something for me to see this product everywhere and to know that he had spent some time here on our show. If you haven't already hit the follow, subscribe button wherever you're watching this, we'd love for you to stay up to date with the show. Don't miss an episode, and share this episode with a friend if it'll support them. If you've never met me before, my name is Daryl Evans. I'm the host of the show, and I'll see you again next week. Talk to you soon. Hit the subscribe button so you can become a part of the Mind Shift community. We'll help you shift your mind so you can shift your results.